Have you ever noticed that no matter how overwhelmed you are, you still tell people, I'm fine? Even when you're exhausted, even when you're carrying more than you can handle, even when a single conversation could make everything feel lighter, you stay silent. Not because you don't need help, but because asking for it feels strangely impossible. And maybe you've wondered why. Why is it so easy to help everyone else, yet so difficult to let someone help you? The answer might have nothing to do with being independent. It might have everything to do with what your heart quietly learned a long time ago. Some people carry invisible weight so naturally that they stop noticing how heavy it has become. You wake up, go to work, answer messages, smile when someone asks how you're doing, and somehow make it through another day. Inside, though, your mind never really rests. You solve every problem alone. You search for answers before asking questions. You spend hours figuring things out yourself rather than sending one simple text that says, I need you. And the strange part is, when someone else struggles, you're probably the first person to show up. You listen, you encourage them, you remind them they're not a burden. But somehow, those same words never apply to you. If someone offered to carry your pain for just one day, would you actually let them? Or would you say, no, it's okay? Because somewhere deep inside, it never feels okay. People often mistake this behavior for strength. They say things like, you're so independent, you never complain, you always have everything under control. But what they don't see is how expensive that image becomes. Because constantly carrying everything alone doesn't just drain your energy. It slowly convinces you that needing people is something you should outgrow. And that's where the misunderstanding begins. Most people who never ask for help aren't trying to prove they're strong. They're trying to avoid something much more painful: disappointment. Maybe there was a time when asking didn't work. Maybe you spoke up and nobody listened. Maybe your feelings were ignored. Maybe you were told you were overreacting. Maybe people were too busy with their own problems. Or maybe you simply learned that if you wanted something done, you had to do it yourself. Children don't need someone to say, don't ask for help. Sometimes life teaches that lesson without using a single word. When emotional support is unpredictable, the brain quietly adapts. It starts believing, if I don't expect anything from anyone, I can't be disappointed. At first, that belief feels protective. It helps you survive difficult moments. But years later, the danger is gone, the habit remains. And suddenly, you're an adult who apologizes before asking simple questions, who spends hours struggling with something alone instead of asking for 5 minutes of help, who says, I don't want to bother anyone, even when the people around you genuinely care. Pause for a second. Think about the last time you needed help. Not wanted, needed. Did you ask? Or did you convince yourself that you could figure it out eventually? Sometimes eventually becomes months or years. People who rarely ask for help often become experts at hiding exhaustion. They know exactly how to smile while feeling overwhelmed. They know how to change the subject when someone asks how they're doing. They know how to disappear for a while until they feel presentable again. Not because they're dishonest, because vulnerability feels unfamiliar. There's another quiet habit that often goes unnoticed. They prepare for every possible problem before it happens. They overthink, double-check everything, take on extra responsibility. Not because they enjoy it, but because depending on someone else feels riskier than carrying the entire load themselves. It's exhausting, yet somehow it feels safer. Relationships become complicated too. You may love people deeply, care about them endlessly, remember every little detail about their lives. But when your own world starts falling apart, nobody knows. Because you've become so skilled at protecting everyone from your struggles that you've accidentally isolated yourself. The loneliness isn't always about being alone. Sometimes it's about being surrounded by people who have no idea you're hurting. And here's something many people never realize. Refusing help doesn't just affect you, it affects the people who love you. Imagine someone close to you saying, I didn't tell you because I didn't want to burden you. Would that make you feel relieved? Or would it make you wish they had trusted you enough to let you in? That's the strange thing. The kindness you freely give others, you quietly deny them the chance to give back. Not intentionally, just automatically. Some people believe asking for help makes them weak. But think about that for a moment. When someone trusts you enough to share their pain, do you think less of them? Probably not. You probably respect their honesty. You probably want to comfort them. So why does your mind create a different rule for you? Because emotional rules aren't always logical. They're familiar. And familiarity often disguises itself as truth. Here's another pause. What if the real fear isn't hearing no? What if it's discovering that your needs matter too? For someone who spent years minimizing themselves, that idea can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. Because if your needs matter, then you have to admit you've been carrying too much for too long. And that's a painful realization. Many people spend years believing they're independent, when they're actually emotionally self-protective. There's a difference. True independence says, I can do this. Emotional self-protection whispers, I have to do this alone. One comes from confidence, the other comes from fear. The actions may look identical. The feelings underneath couldn't be more different. Healing doesn't always begin with a dramatic conversation. Sometimes it starts with something much smaller. Answering honestly when someone asks, how are you? Accepting help without immediately trying to repay it. Letting someone carry a tiny piece of your stress. Saying, I don't know, I'm struggling. Can you help me? Those words may seem ordinary, but for someone who spent years surviving alone, they can feel revolutionary. And here's the truth many people need to hear. You don't earn love by needing nothing. You don't become more valuable by carrying impossible amounts of pain in silence. The people who truly care about you aren't keeping score. They're not waiting for you to become perfectly self-sufficient. They're simply waiting for you to let them in. Maybe you spent so long being everyone's safe place that you've forgotten you deserve one too. Maybe you've become so used to holding everything together that you've forgotten what it feels like to put something down. You were never meant to carry every burden alone. No one was. Strength isn't measured by how much pain you can hide. Sometimes, real strength is trusting someone enough to let them see it. And if today's words felt strangely personal, if parts of this sounded less like information and more like your own thoughts spoken out loud, then maybe this isn't a sign that you're weak. Maybe it's a reminder that you've been strong for much longer than anyone realizes. And maybe, just maybe, the next time someone sincerely asks, do you need anything? Instead of saying, I'm fine, you'll pause. Just long enough to remember that asking for help isn't giving up. It's finally believing that you don't have to face everything alone.